टोरंटो से हम लोग फिर निकल रहे हैं शिकागो के लिए और इस दफ़ा हम वहाँ पर एक हफ्ते तक क़याम करेंगे। हम जाते हुए अपना पहला पड़ाव विंडसर शहर में डालेंगे, जहाँ रुककर कुछ खाने पीने के बाद हम बॉर्डर क्रॉस करेंगे और डेट्रॉइट में जाकर कुछ वक्त गुजारेंगे। डेट्रॉइट से हम शिकागो शहर की तरफ बगैर किसी स्टॉप के चल पड़ेंगे, जहाँ हमने अपनी रहाइश के लिए एक होटल बुक कराया हुआ। इससे पहले भी मैं फ्लोरिडा में अपनी मुलाजमत के दौरान 4 साल गुजार चुका हूँ और वहाँ रहते हुए उसके कुछ और शहरों में भी घूमने फिरने का इत्तेफाक हुआ, लेकिन शिकागो में पहली दफ़ा जा रहा हूँ। शिकागो के बारे में सुना है कि वो एक बड़ा शहर है, अमेरिका का तीसरा बड़ा शहर है और एक बिज़नेस के एतबार से उसकी बहुत अहमियत है और हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान के लोगों की एक बड़ी तादाद वहाँ मुकीम है। हमने शहर के एक सबर्ब में अपना होटल बुक कराया था और आमतौर पर सबर्ब में उस तरह का रश नहीं होता जो हम न्यूयॉर्क और टोरंटो में देखते हैं। यहाँ लोग गाड़ियों में आते जाते हैं, पैदल चलते फिरते लोग नज़र नहीं आते और हर चीज़ थोड़े फासले पर होती है। बहुत खुला फैला हुआ शहर और हमने गूगल की मदद से इसके मुख्तलिफ हिस्सों की सैर की और अपना पहला दिन हमने बिल्कुल रखा था डाउनटाउन की सैर के लिए। और डाउनटाउन जाकर हमने उसमें एक बोट राइड लेनी थी और बोट राइड भी कई तरह की होती हैं। एक होती है आर्किटेक्चर, क्योंकि शिकागो शहर जो है वो अपनी तामीरात की वजह से दुनिया में बहुत मशहूर है और ख़ासकर डाउनटाउन में जो उसकी इमारत हैं, हर इमारत के साथ एक कहानी जुड़ी हुई है। हर इमारत के साथ उसका बैकग्राउंड, उसके आर्किटेक्ट की एक दास्तान है, बनाने वाले और मालिकान की एक दास्तान है। और जब आप सैर करते हैं तो गाइड आपको बताता रहता है कि किस बिल्डिंग में क्या चीज़ें मौजूद हैं, कौन सी बिल्डिंग कब तामीर हुई और इसका कलर और इसके डिज़ाइन की ख़ास बातें क्या है।
But her the apartment she wanted was so fantastic, it was too big for that building, and so she did not get the chance to live there. That's a shame. Now that was designed by a German architect, and his name was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Ludwig Mies van
इस बोर्ड का टिकट लिया हमने और इसमें 3 तरह के बोर्ड हैं। कुछ स्पीड है, डेंजरस है, एडवेंचर है किसी में और किसी में कुछ और है। हमने ये आर्किटेक्चर वाला लिया है जिसमें ये पूरे डाउनटाउन की सैर कराएंगे और जो इनकी मशहूर बुलंद वाला इमारतें हैं इसके बारे में बताएंगे। तो हमारे टिकट का क्या टाइम है? हम जल्दी आ गए यहाँ पे, जो हमारा टाइम है लिखा है 12:30। लाइन लगी हुई है किस बोर्ड पे कौन लोग जाएंगे। सबसे पहले वाला जो है वो स्पीड और थ्रिल है, उसके आगे भी कोई इस तरह का एडवेंचर टाइप है। हम जिस टाइम पे लगे हैं वो है यहाँ का आर्किटेक्चर दिखाना और हमारी जो राइड है वो 75 मिनट की है। उसमें एक गाइड पूरा बताएगा कि यहाँ की मशहूर बिल्डिंग है, डाउनटाउन में पूरा पानी में लेके जाएगा और बताएगा कि यहाँ पे कहाँ क्या चीज़ें हैं। तो ये पूरी एक जगह और खाने पीने की आप झूले हैं और तमाम चीज़ें हैं और इस तरह से पूरा फन का माहौल है। और जैसे जैसे शाम होगी यहाँ पे लोग और आएंगे, काफ़ी रौनकें होंगी।
An architectural speedboat tour. That's right. That's our tour today. So, hello, sea dogs, and welcome to our 12-15 75-minute architecture river cruise. That's the name of our cruise. Thank you. Now, if your ticket, please look at your ticket. If it doesn't say that, if it says 12 o'clock and not 12:15, if it says 1 or it doesn't say river cruise or one of these crazy things, wave it up in the air like this. I'll come look at it. You take a magic marker, I'll make an X, and then you'll get right off the boat. Don't even worry. Okay, good to know. A couple things to do. Hello, my name is Leo Baum, and right now I am your safety coordinator. That's right, your safety coordinator. And there's a couple things we have to get straight. We have to get together. Now, this is a boat we all have to be safe, and you might have a condition. You might have some kind of an issue physically. There's always something, okay? But maybe yours has something to do with your head. Lake Michigan, heading towards the Great Chicago River here in Chicago in the summertime. This is the time to be here. You might have heard that on one of your websites you traveled to find your tickets, and you've all made it here today to Chicago, and this is fantastic. There's a couple more rules, safety regulations to cover, and here we go. Number one, this is one of Memorial 75-minute architectural speedboat tour. That's right. That's our tour today. So we'll be referencing Mr. Bennett, who died just yesterday, passed away just yesterday at 96. He was world renowned. He was terrific. He had an early career and later on also through wonderful duets with the likes of Lady Gaga and other fabulous contemporary stars. So really, it's an awful thing. But he was sick at this point. Okay, you can see right here, we'll be going that direction and entering the locks. But in order to understand these locks, because a lot of cities don't have them. A lot of cities don't have the Chicago Harbor locks. In order to understand them, we have to learn about Chicago, okay? So take a look right now. Look at this great big city, okay? This wasn't always here. We actually call this the second city. We sure do. But before we learn about the second city, we better learn about the first city that was here. And here's how it started. There was a man, and he was a settler, and he was an explorer, and he was going through the Americas. He was going through America, and he was traveling, and he was a French guy. As his name was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. That was his name. And he's a very clever guy, and he loved beavers. He loved the beavers, and so he would track them, and he would go all around the Americas looking for the beavers. So du Sable's on one of his beaver hunts. He's going around, he just circles, he's just like a maze, because the beavers don't follow a pattern when they walk, okay? They're unpredictable. But du Sable was one of the best. He was one of the best beaver catchers, truly, in all of this country that was so far established in the Canadian sections or the French, Spanish, whatever it was. So du Sable's traveling around, and this beaver is going around. It's a tall beaver, and it's going around, and it dead ends at a body of water. It dead ends this body of water, this beaver. And du Sable looks up with inspiration. He says, oh, this is very nice. Petals falling from the heavens in a circular way. These buildings brought people back to the Chicago downtown. And you can see concerts there, and all of the condos are shaped like a pie slice, like this, because of the way the buildings are designed as circles. That's pretty neat. And we'll notice on our right side, this red brick building. It's red and it's brick. And it is actually the oldest building on the Chicago River. That's completely true. This building right here, which says Whirlpool and also has a clock, is the Reed Murdoch building. That's right, it's the Reed Murdoch building, built in 1914. It's the oldest one here. If you look at it from this angle, once we see it, and it looks kind of regular, it looks kind of boring. But if you look closer, you'll notice it's a little askew. It's a little strange. The left side of the building actually only has 5 window bays, where the right side has 6. Could you believe it? You would never know. You would never know. And why would Mr. Murdoch, why would he want his titular building to be done in such a way? I'll tell you, it has something to do with something called LaSalle Street. This street right here, LaSalle Street, it used to be so thin. It was pencil thin. You couldn't get down it. You couldn't push a cart down the street. And so when Chicago wanted to widen LaSalle, they knocked down a whole section of the Reed Murdoch building in order to make room for this road. And then they reconstructed it in a still beautiful way, and that's how it stands today. Now, you might also know Chicago, if you're from out of town or in town, as it once was, as the former mail order capital of the world, okay? Before we had websites, whatever it was, people were sent catalogs by several massive conglomerate companies, like Sears, Roebuck & Co., and like Montgomery Ward, these 2 massive companies. They needed a place to store all of their merchandise. And that is why we constructed right here on your right, the Merchandise Mart, designed in 1930 in the Art Deco style by architectural firm Graham, Anderson, Craig & White. This massive building, believe it or not, was the biggest building in the world by square footage for most of recent history. It was the biggest until one other building, which was actually the Pentagon. That's right. The Pentagon is the only building in the world bigger by square footage. And you'll notice these little statues, these heads of titans of industry, like Mr. Marshall Field, the Montgomery Ward, as we pay respect to them for building up this great city as the mail order capital that it is. And look where we've ended up. Look at this section over here, which we call Wolf Point. We've made it. Here's where Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable first built his log cabin and saloon and beaver factory. They all lived right around here in this area. And currently, it's the site of major development. That's very true. But in the past, this is where Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable was. You'll notice a ton of modern architecture. For example, this right here, the Salesforce Tower, was actually completed this year. It was built and finished in 2023. And looking at one of the many projects currently being done at Wolf Point. You'll also notice right here on your right side, that is 150 North Riverside Plaza. But it kind of looks strange. There's something bizarre about it. What is it about this building? Why is that? Why does it look like a game of Jenga? It looks like it could topple at every moment, and it doesn't look like it's done so well. Here's the reason for that. In this great city, in this city of Chicago, there is one board which is responsible for all, and that is the Chicago Transit Authority. And they have the rights to the ground and the heavens above and everything around. Now these people right here at 150 North Riverside, they didn't want to pay the additional fees necessary for having a wider building footprint. So instead, they used a sophisticated cantilever system to keep this building standing up straight. In a similar way, you'll notice on your right side, this right here, which we know as the Boeing Building. And this had a similar idea to 150 North Riverside Plaza, except instead of one little tower propelling the entire building, there's a couple of pillars on the side which hold up the building. So the rest of the building is actually not touching the floor, allowing for the Chicago trains to go right underneath. This right here is the Boeing Building. Now coming up on your right side, as you'll see right here, this is another Art Deco masterpiece. This right here is 2 North Riverside Plaza. That's the name of this building right here. It is the former headquarters of the Chicago Daily News. And it's built to resemble an Egyptian artifact. Now, does anybody know any massive Egyptian artifacts? Anybody? Here it is, go. One more. What is it? What is it? Oh, the Sphinx. It's the Sphinx. Look at this building right here. It was actually built to resemble the Sphinx. Here we have the two Sphinx, maybe their arms or legs, whatever they are, coming out from the side. And he's done it in this style, and it's a beautiful thing. And it was one of the first buildings in the city to face the river. This plaza facing toward the river was monumental. It was significant, and it's still there today. Now, there is a ton more modern architecture on this river, excuse me, all done in the style of Nice Standard Road. Right here you'll see even more, several more beautiful examples of how this style was developed. That's completely true. The same steel and glass design. You'll also see it further refined in this white and black building coming up in a more postmodern take on that style. Now, you've all come to Chicago to see something special. And there's one building you might have heard of, and there's one building that you might love. I love it too. And there's a great picture you're going to get of it. So if I were you, I'd get your cell phones, because this is where you're going to see the tallest building in our great city. You'll see the tallest building in the city, designed by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill in 1973. It is tall, it is robust. It also headquartered a mail order company, and it has floor plans of varying sizes. We are right now, ladies and gentlemen, approaching the Sears Tower. So we're about to see it. We're just about to see it. Here we go. Look at this right here. Look at it as you can see it. We'll see it even a little more in just a second too. All right. Anytime. If anyone confused, this is the Sears Tower, wherever it's worth to you. Now, where'd it go? Oh, it's coming up again. Don't even worry, it's coming right down. Now, the Sears Tower, like I said, was designed in 1973 by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, a prominent Chicago architectural firm. But it has kind of a strange design, and it was actually one of the first buildings to be designed in this way. Here's what happened in the office. These were the greatest architects of their generation. They were all together in their office, and they're all smoking cigars. All of these architects smoked cigars in the office, and it was time for their daily meeting. So they all got together in a huddle, and they're huddling up like this. But they're all smoking their cigars, and none of them can breathe, and it's disgusting. Okay, that voice, I'm sorry my voice is gone, by the way, but this is their rendition of what it might have sounded like, so possibly. Anyway, one architect who was a non-smoker scooped up all the cigars in his left hand, and he looked at him like this because he was so angry. And he took them, and he said, "What are we doing here?" And another architect said, "I have an idea." And he started to articulate the cigars in a very artistic fashion until he became upon a model of very structural design. And that design became the design of the Sears Tower. That's completely true. It was modeled with cigars. Now, excuse me, we're approaching on our right side, right here, what was once the economical center of this great major place to work in the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, and all the years before. Excuse me. Now, this building right here on your right side, the Mercantile Exchange, is done in a very exciting kind of a way. You'll notice the two towers, which are going on either side of this building. They are actually raising the roof. They are holding up the roof. The architect of this building was a very well-traveled man. He loved the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos and all these places he loved to visit. And he loved to sit on hammocks and relax. And so in designing this building, he built it like a hammock. The roof is held up like a hammock, and each tower leans 4 inches to either direction, holding up the roof of a 40,000 square foot trading floor. On your right side right here is what we call the Chicago Civic Opera Building. That's right, it's the Civic Opera Building. And it was financed by Mr. Samuel Insull. He was the proprietor, and he was responsible for the completion of this building. Now, Mr. Insull bought a lot of himself. And this day today, we wouldn't like him. And They didn't like him so much then. And they also didn't like him in New York. And he knew that. He knew that. And so when he built this building, he built it like a throne to declare himself the master and king of all of the surrounding areas. And the back of that throne is facing New York, as if to tell them, we are Chicago. So to some effect, he supports the city, and another, he's a terrible guy. But that's a great place. I saw an opera there. I saw Carmen, and I was 4 minutes late to Carmen. And because it's an opera house, they don't let you in if you're late. And so I sat in the lobby with a club soda in a folding chair for an hour and 45 minutes until the intermission. That's completely true. And now I really lost most of the show. That was my day there, but still fun to see right along there. Now, from this angle, we can see our great Salesforce Tower in an even bigger way, in an even more special way, which is completely true. I'm going to try to move my voice to a higher octave, and maybe that'll be more legible on this tour. Here we go. Okay. Going along underneath this next bridge, we'll see another building famous for its role in cinema. Chicago's not often known for cinema. Normally we talk about, what's it called, New York. We talk about Los Angeles and Hollywood, but we don't mention Chicago. Maybe you're familiar with a movie called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anybody Ferris Bueller? This building approaching on your right side is actually the office building of Ferris Bueller's father. You'll see it coming around. You can see it poking above us in another kind of a stripy way. It's similar to the tower as we first saw going in, the St. Regis Hotel, in that it has stripes reflecting the great Chicago River. And that right there, when we see it, will be known as 333 West Wacker. Oh! You might realize it was an animated trick. It was not actually right here, but they filmed the scenes of this building and then they filmed in a different location later on. So this right here is 333 West Wacker. Now, as I've said before, Chicago is the city of metaphor. Chicago loves symbolism in their buildings. And so when they constructed 333 West Wacker, the reflection of the river was not enough. They needed some more. They wanted something to bring all Chicagoans together. And so they bought another plot of land. That's completely true. They bought the adjacent plot of land right here at 225 West Wacker. But you might notice these buildings don't look alike. These buildings are different. Well, I'm here to tell you that these buildings are siblings. These are sister buildings. And they're as different as they could be. But what are we supposed to learn from that? Even though we're related, and even though we might not look identical to each other, we can find common ground. We can stand next to each other and be joyful and appreciate the beauty of this great city. So next time you're looking for a metaphor, take a look at 333 and 225. Those are two places to remember, the postmodern and the more classical style. See another building. Here's another building right here. And this was a building built for the builders, okay? Looking here on your right side, this is something we like to call the Builders Building. That's completely true, the Builders Building. Now, the Builders Building was built twice. They loved it so much, they tried to build it again. This first section on the left was built in the earlier part of the 20th century by architectural firm Graham, Anderson, Probst & White, a Chicago staple. And the section on the left right there was built by Chicago firm Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. And you'll notice Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, or we call them SOM, paid tribute to the left side of the building in their design, creating just another example of harmony in the architecture in Chicago. It expanded the space, and the builders were given another wonderful place to flourish. Now let's get a glimpse while we can. Look forward right there on your right side at that building covered in gold. There's a building that kind of looks like champagne, or it kind of looks like a bottle. That right there is what we call the Carbon and Carbide building. That's the Carbon and Carbide building, and it was built in the Art Deco style. It was actually built during the Prohibition, and as a symbol against the government, as an anti-prohibition symbol, it was constructed to look like a bottle of champagne. And actually, it's very stunning. It's very stunning. It's got a great look in green and gold. Those colors go great together, so consider them as you want to. Now, you might look around the right side of the river. You might see a ton of pathways and passageways and all of the local Chicagoans going around. This is a project we like to call the Chicago River Walk. The Riverwalk is here to once again revitalize this great river. It includes many restaurants. It's got bleacher seating. It has all these different things, a garden. It has greenery. And it's only meant to bring more people into this downtown so they can appreciate the beauty of what we get to see today. It's this towering building right here with the pushed out corners. That is what I like to call the Leo Burnett Building. The Leo Burnett Building is actually the home of some fun friends of ours. It's the home of Tony the Tiger, the Jolly Green Giant, and the Marlboro Man. All of those characters were conceived by the Leo Burnett Company, one of the most renowned advertising companies of the mid-century. Now, you'll see right here, it'll go away for a second under the bridge. Looking on your right side right there, that is what we know as the Jewelers Building. The Jewelers Building. It's called that because it was inhabited by a large number of jewelers with expensive rubies and diamonds and emeralds. And on the top floor of that building was a restaurant. And that restaurant was called the Stratosphere. And it was operated by one Al Capone. And Mr. Al Capone and his guys weren't the greatest guys. And they liked to take all the jewels from the jewelers. And the jewelers were getting all nervous because they made their living with all of these jewels. So here's what they did. In the center of that building, they hollowed it out. And they built an elevator. They built an automobile elevator. And so now jewelers can make it to their offices without being robbed in the middle of the building. That's true. Looking here on your right side, you'll notice this building right here, which in Chicago we know as the inverted spyglass. The inverted spyglass. That right there is the Mather Tower. And it is a product of zoning regulation. That's true. There was a zoning ordinance which stated that the top half of the building, the square footage of that, the footprint, would not be more than 25% of the footprint of the bottom portion of the building. The only way to build that tall was to use this kind of a funny design. It's attached to this building right here, which we know is the London House Hotel, named after a former jazz club, which used to be on the basement level in the early 20th century. At this point, it's a prestigious hotel. It's a wonderful place to stay with obviously terrific views of this great river. Now, I'll point your attention right now, as we will very soon, over to this left side, where we will soon see the Tribune Tower. Here it goes, coming up along. Here it is, the Tribune Tower. It was done in the neoclassical, neo-Gothic style, and you'll see on the top, there's a series of flying buttresses, which are an architectural element, which keep the entire building together. And there was actually a competition for the design of that building. That's completely true. There was a competition. And people from across the world entered it. They really, really did. One such person who entered, his name was Ilyos Saranin. And he was actually the father of Euro Saranin, who designed the arch in St. Louis. But here's the thing. He did not get the nomination. He was not selected. So instead, the Tribune chose that design. I'll also tell you, on the outside of the Tribune building are many artifacts. There's artifacts across the board. They have pieces from each state in America, a piece of the Berlin Wall, of the Twin Towers in New York, the pyramids in Egypt, all contained on the facade of the Tribune Tower. Now, looking here on your left side, this is what we know in the stylings of Eco Deco. It kind of looks Art Deco, but not quite. This right here is the NBC Tower, designed and finished in 1989. Now, if any of you are from New York, or like New York, or NBC, or broadcast television, you might be familiar with 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. NBC wants consistency, apparently, in their office buildings. And so when they built an office in Chicago, they built it almost to the exact measure, almost to mark. The thing was, it was 1989, they had certain trends that were in the air floating around, and they wanted to incorporate that into their office. So now, it is the tower, that's that right there. Now, we are continuing to go along on our great journey, but that just about concludes it. That is the conclusion of our river tour. Let's have a round of applause. We're going to take a leisure. Buildings in the middle of Lake Michigan. That's what we'll do. And we'll get our water from there. And they did it. They built 5 circular buildings way out in the distance. You might have seen them on the speedboat portion. the way from Lake Michigan, and it would make its way from there to the homes of these wonderful Chicagoans, these young, ambitious people who lived in this new city. But the water still had a problem. The water would still drift, and all of the awful things you didn't want in the water would still go ahead. So Chicago still had a problem.
Guys, while we're in the lock, I need everyone on the right side of the vessel to keep all hands, arms, elbows, fingers, toes, and
you'll see there's a darker portion of the concrete over there. We used to, just minutes ago, we used to be right at the top of that. We didn't see any dark portion. But as we've been descending, as these gates are opening, and the water is going through, the Standard Oil Company, but Aon bought the rights, and then they changed the name. Okay, now you look at it, and you might think it's unremarkable, okay? You could not be more wrong, because boy oh boy is there a story. Every building in Chicago has a story, and the Aon Center is no exception. Now, the Aon Center, when it was originally built, was clad, which means covered. It was clad in a beautiful Italian Carrara marble. That's true. The whole thing, so all those sections in that lighter color was a marble. The thing is, though, marble is very heavy. It's good for countertops. We love it for our countertops if given the choice, okay? We love it there. We don't love it on the buildings. And at that elevation, it began to crack. It began to splinter. And a young Chicagoan going to work one day, when he was walking near the Standard Oil building, a piece of marble came off the building and landed right next to him right there. And it almost hit him, but he was okay. And so they installed guardrails, like you have on a bed if you're a child and you're too small. They put up guardrails. And then, after that, they put up granite. They replaced the marble with granite. And listen, granite's never as good as marble. We don't like granite as much. We'd all prefer marble if we had the choice. But for now, the granite's better because it's lighter, and now we have that terrific Aon Center. Let's also look over here on your right side at this kind of a clover-like building with rounded edges to it, okay? That right there is the Lake Point Tower. Lake Point Tower. Any fans of David Axelrod? Does anybody like David Axelrod here in this boat? No? Yes? There we go. David Axelrod lives right there. Former chief of staff lives right in that building. Any fans of Oprah on the boat? Oprah? All right, I hate to say it, Oprah does not live there, but she wanted to. But the apartment she wanted was so fantastic, it was too big for that building, and so she did not get the chance to live there. That's a shame. Now, that was designed by a German architect, and his name was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and he's incredibly famous and renowned for being the head of the Bauhaus school in Germany. That's completely true. He was renowned for his style of architecture, which is very... There were so many world events happening there, they did not have the chance. And so instead, 50 years later, his followers, his students, built it right here in Chicago. And you'll notice, if you look at it right now, it's the easternmost building you can see on the skyline. That's right, because there is an ordinance in Chicago that states no building, no condominium, none of these things will be built east of Lakeshore Drive, one of our favorite local highways with a speed limit of 40 miles an hour. Now, no other buildings are built. They found a loophole, they found a stipulation, there was a highway off-ramp and they built it in between or something like that. And so that's why we have the Lake Point Tower. But I think it's rather magnificent. And if you're looking for dessert later on, maybe a creme brulee with a view, you can go right there to the Lake Point Tower. They have a restaurant on the top floor right over there, and they have beautiful, wonderful, terrific food for you to enjoy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our special signal. It is now time to enter the Chicago River. One more round of applause. Oh, man. Let's get going with what we can see still. Man, oh man, look at this city in all of its grandiose glory. Can you see it? God almighty. Let's start with what we know the best, right here at the top. What is this very modern looking building? It's so modern, actually. I'll tell you, it's postmodern. What I'm pointing to is this kind of rounded, curvy building which reaches towards the sky, scrapes the skies right here in the center, right where the hull, right where the boat is facing. Okay. That is what we in Chicago know right now as the St. Regis Hotel. That's correct. And it's actually one of the newest buildings in all of the city. It's one of the newest buildings in Chicago. It is also the tallest building in the entire United States built by a female architect. That's thank you. Her name is Jean Gang, and she is fantastic. She's done a ton of beautiful projects both in the city and outside. And she's also responsible for the Aqua Tower, which is right off the river. We can't see it so well, but it's still something to take note. Now, you might look at this building, you'll say it's kind of a non-traditional design, okay? Modernism mostly is about straight lines and edges, and it's very utilitarian. This right here is not so many of those things. It seems to reflect the character of this great Chicago River. And isn't that interesting? When we get closer to it, you'll notice that it reflects the world around it. So when Jean Gay was designing the St. Regis Hotel, which right now is the third tallest building in Chicago, she wanted it to reflect the lake at any moment. So you look at the sky right now, there's certain colors happening here. Those colors create a shade of the lake, of the river, which is then reflected right there in the St. Regis Hotel. That's completely true. Now, the architectural term that we use for that building is undulating. That's how it goes, to resemble the waves. So it undulates up towards the skies as a skyscraper. We'll also see that we will soon go right underneath of this bridge right here. Chicago is famous for its bridges, over 20 bridges in the main portion of the city. This bridge right here is the bridge for Lakeshore Drive. That's completely true, for Lakeshore Drive. Now, to you and me, it looks kind of regular. It looks like a walkway. Maybe it's interesting that it's double-decker, right? You see there's little guys, pedestrians walking towards the bottom part, and there's cars on the top part, as we can see. Now, right underneath, and on that right side, there used to be a man. And that man decided he wanted to live right under that bridge. He wanted to live right underneath of that bridge. And he lived here in the middle section of this bridge, and this is completely true. He lived there for 3 years. He sure did. And he built himself a little cottage. He had like a countertop stove and a toaster oven, and he had a water kettle, and he had all of these different things that were easy, because he had an extension cord, you know, which connected to a power strip. He had all of these things. And he lived right there. Can you see it in that middle section right there? Now, the police found him, and they issued a report. And that report said he was only there for 9 months. But they didn't want the public to know. And the Sun-Times broke it the next morning. We have 2 newspapers here in Chicago. We have the Tribune and the Sun-Times. Right now the Sun-Times isn't doing so well, and I don't get it anymore, right? But the Sun-Times broke the story, and they said he was living there for 3 years. And then eventually they took him away, and that's now, we will continue to cruise along this way, along the Chicago River. And you'll notice there's a ton of buildings to look at, and a couple that are also unimpressive. For instance, these 2 right here, these are condominium buildings. These are just regular condominium. I don't think they're so pretty. They're also done in the postmodern style within the past 30 years, and they're not so exciting. There's actually limited information about them and on the residents. But if you look over to this side, you'll get a better view of that St. Regis Hotel right there. It's a series of 3 towers that are actually connected the whole way through. Now, aside from this building and a couple others, you'll notice most buildings are very rectangular. They occupy a square footprint, okay? And when you're in these buildings, it's hard to have every window with a terrific view. So when you're in the city, everybody wants a room with a view. Everybody wants a room with a view. And so one clever architect had an idea. He was going to build in a different shape. And that brings us to this building right here I'm pointing to. This one with the stripes of blue and a black. That right there is the Swiss Hotel. Triangle in a city of squares. Every room gets a view. Everyone gets to see something. When it's square to square, it's like you're right against your neighbor. The buildings are kissing each other and you can't see so much. Right here you can notice all of those people there can see us if we were to wave. So that's a magnificent building right there. These are condominium buildings. These are just regular condominium. I don't think they're so pretty. They're also done in the postmodern style within the past 30 years, and they're not so exciting. There's actually limited information about them and on the residents. But if you look over to this side, you'll get a better view of that St. Regis Hotel right there. It's a series of 3 towers that are actually connected the whole. Guys, pedestrians walking towards the bottom part, and there's cars on the top part, as we can see. Now, right underneath and on that right side, there used to be a man. And that man decided he wanted to live right under that bridge. He wanted to live right underneath of that bridge. And he lived here in the middle section of this bridge. And this is completely... Now, you might look at this building, you'll say it's kind of a non-traditional design, okay? Modernism mostly is about straight lines and edges, and it's very utilitarian. This right here is not so many of those things. It seems to reflect the character of this great Chicago. Oprah, all right, I hate to say it, Oprah does not live there, but she wanted to. But the apartment she wanted was so fantastic, it was too big for that building, and so she did not get the chance to live there. That's a shame. Now that was designed by a German architect, and his name was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe covered. It was clad in a beautiful Italian Carrera marble. That's true. The whole thing. So all those sections in that lighter color was a marble. The thing is though, marble is very heavy. It's good for countertops. We love it for our countertops if given the choice, okay? We love it there. We don't love it on the buildings. And at that elevation, it began to crack. It began to splinter. And you might think it's unremarkable, okay? You could not be more wrong, because boy oh boy is there a story. Every building in Chicago has a story. That's what we'll do. And we'll get our water from there. And they did it. They built 5 circular buildings way out in the distance. You might have seen them on the speedboat portion. Yesterday at 96, he was world renowned. He was terrific. He had an early career and later on also through wonderful duets with the likes of Lady Gaga and other fabulous contemporary stars. So really, it's an awful thing. But you know, he was sick, and so yes. Right, Sea Dogs. All right, here we go again, and now we're going. We're moving along on this great Lake Michigan, heading towards the great Chicago River here in Chicago in the summertime. This is the time to be here. You might have heard that on one of your websites you traveled to find your tickets.
Heater on it had a crack in it, and every time we were going by, it would like separate.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, maybe. One year, my oldest sister and I taped all of her pictures on the tornado.
Masterpieces beloved by all of local Chicago. If you have a parent who lives here, or you're a parent or a grandparent, my mom always says to my grandparents, they say, go to the corn cobs. They say, you've got to go to the corn cobs. This is what we in Chicago know as the corn cob buildings. These right here, this is Marina City. These postmodern structures were constructed in 1964 and designed by the architect Bertram Goldberg. And they were supposed to be, and they still are, a city.
is what it is, right? It's Chicago. It happens all the time. But just a quick little thing, guys. Can you make some noise for Leo for giving a great tour? All right, guys. Like I said, we'll be tying off the boat. Just make sure you don't rush off to the back of the boat like all at once. Once the ramp is down, we gotta get it tied down. Gotta make secured. Yes, you have to wait for your captain, Captain Jamie, to tell you when you are safe to get off the boat. Just make sure we're not rushing. All right, not pushing. Neat single file line, please. Also, watch your step. It's gonna be a little slippery. We don't want anybody getting hurt when this close to the finish line, so keep all of that in mind.
डाउनटाउन टोरंटो में बहुत अच्छा वक्त गुजरा और वहाँ मुख्तलिफ़ चीज़ों की सैर करते हुए और खाते पीते हम लोग वापस आए और हमने दूसरा दिन भी शिकागो में गुजारा।